Meanwhile, in the dead end, I give an art lesson, I use a hammer, and we tackle nature's most complex problem. How do porcupines have sex? Hello, and welcome back to Dead End Restorations, the channel where an average Joe, yours truly, restores a fine, broken BMW back to its former glory. This is part 2 of Project E34. In the last episode, we gave a quick tour of the car and a quick wash. In this episode, we're going to do some engine troubleshooting. We're going to count all the leaky bits that are happening around the engine bay, and we're going to get busy with a grinder on all the crispy bits. I have a sinking feeling the front jacking points are going to be worse than I think, but fingers crossed, we'll see what happens. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hey, who left that door open? You're letting the draft in. When I was driving the car home, actually, it developed a check engine light. Surprise, surprise. So what we're going to do now is what's called as the stomp test. So I've got my foot on the throttle, ready to go. I'm going to turn the key to the on position. And many people don't actually know this, but E34s sold in North America, I believe from the year 1990 onwards, have an onboard engine diagnostic system, which is basically like Morse code. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to stomp the throttle 5 times as soon as we put it onto the second on position. The engine light is going to come on for 5 seconds, pause, come on again for 2.5 seconds, and then it's going to flash and count the number of times that it flashes represents a number. If it flashes once, it means a 1. If it flashes 2, it means a 2, etc. And then we're going to read what the engine codes have to say. So let's take a look. Foot ready. And you got to do this really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1. All right, so that code is 1221. All right, so looking at the Bentley manual, if you look at the code 1221, oxygen sensor number 1. All right, that's an easy fix. We'll order that up. Moving on. All right, I've done a little bit more digging under the hood. Shockingly, believe it or not, it has oil leaks. So I'm not sure how well you can see. There's a wet spot. Valve cover gasket is leaking. The power steering fluid reservoir is leaking. The soft lines coming in and out of the power steering reservoir are leaking. The coupling on the hard lines, not sure how well you guys can see that on the bottom. Surprisingly, the cooling system isn't leaking, although that hose there looks like it's been patched up, so that's going to go. And the fan shroud, I need to order a new one because some of the clips and the holders and the retaining brackets are broken. Over on the passenger side, you can see wet spots there, so that valve cover is toast as well. Shocking, I know. All right, before we move on, I wanted to demystify how this power steering system works and why it leaks so often. Okay, so up here, you've got the reservoir, all right, and there's leaks that happen up here at the top, and then on the bottom of it, there's kind of these 2 snaking return lines, a feed line and a return line that come down like this. Now, these guys get hard and brittle, and so it starts leaking out of here over time. What also happens is there's a high pressure line that goes underneath the engine that goes to the steering box, and that starts to leak like it is on mine. And then you've got another return line that goes around this way from the power steering pump itself. And I've got some leaks on this side as well. So what ends up happening is this is a giant ball bust of a scenario because you got to remove the front headlight, you got to remove a whole bunch of stuff just so you can get to those lines. So hopefully this helps you understand why this system leaks so often. Anyway, enough about that, let's move on. We're just loosening the wheels on this side because we're going to remove them to remove and inspect any rust over here in the fenders and in the general wheel area. The next thing we need to figure out is how the hell are we going to lift this car in such a narrow garage? Well, how do porcupines have sex? Very carefully. All right, now that we're underneath, we're gonna take off the plastic air screening. 10mm bolt there, one is missing there, brilliant. Slightly cracked and loose. All right, let's get to it. Would you look at that? A BMW oil pan that's not leaking around the sides. That's got to be a world first. However, here's our friend, the power steering pump, nice and wet. All right, now to take off the skirts, there's 2 bolts here at the front. Underneath, there's nothing here. And there are these black clips. And then at the back, you've got these 2 little clips down here as well. So let's get to it. So these guys look properly rusty and actually kind of bent out of shape. So I'm just going to spray some WD. Oh yeah, that one's properly bent. And completely falling apart from how rusty it is. Here's my ode to Jeremy Clarkson. We're going to fix this using a hammer. Hopefully. Here goes nothing. Oh, I got a really bad feeling about this. All right, we're gonna get this guy after. Let's move on to the clips. Look at you, bugger. Forgot about you. Cinco. This son of a bitch is not letting go, and until he goes, this thing's not coming up. So we're gonna have to take more drastic measures. You stubborn son of a bitch. Good news, bits of the chassis are coming off. That's a crispy piece right there. Oh yeah. She's got more to give. Son of a bitch broke off. There it is. Let's look at my lovely jack points. So what do we got over here? Well, this guy's pretty toast around here and on the bottom. But actually this isn't terrible. That's salvageable. Here we might have to re-weld some new metal. It's maybe about as bad as I thought. I didn't think the quarter panel was going to get eaten through, but also this small mountain is just what came out of the front left alone. Cue the angle grinder. Now this is definitely the right way to do it, because then I can get down in there and grind that off and make sure it's taken care of properly. And the best part is, if I can reuse this bottom piece here, it has a hole here that bolts the bottom of the quarter panel to the chassis. And if I can't save this, then I have to have a shop re-weld an entirely new custom piece, and they gotta size this up and make sure it sits flush and perfect, and that's just gonna cost a bunch of money. So let's get to it. All right, moving up top. There's a row of bolts here. I'm gonna loosen this rubber trim. Did that break? Probably. And before I get in over my head, I am taping nuts and bolts together to the parts and labeling everything so that I know what goes with what. Whenever the fine day is that I start putting this thing back together. What's good is, it doesn't look like it's rusted down here, which it usually is because it kind of collects a bunch of water down here, but not on this one, thankfully. When in doubt, go manual. Forget manual, speed and power. Take off the bottom door trim. Actually, that's not too bad. Alright, so in order to properly clear up this crusty bottom door here and to make sure that the chassis is solid, we're going to take off all of the trim around the door sill, the rubber around the door, and this entire door panel. Vámonos. There we go. This thing is completely torn up anyway, so it's going to go. Ooh-wee. Well, the great news is there is 0 signs of rust in here. Fantastic. Moving on to the door panel. Okay, tweeters out. There's a second Phillips in here. There's the window trim mount. Well, one is out. So the previous owner clearly took this panel off before, probably broke a bunch of stuff and then hot glued, I think that's what this is, hot glued the clips back onto the back of the panel. Okay, now that this is off, the bottom of the doors is actually very good. There's no rust. Okay, sit rep. What felt like 2 hours of slowly peeling away with this. I just decided to start tearing, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna buy a new one of these, clean this up properly, and then glue in the new piece and not waste my time trying to reuse this piece. So off it comes, we'll get a new one. Back to regular scheduled programming. Carry on. To do that, we're gonna pop off this cover, and take this tray out, and there's 3 screws behind there. I think it's pretty safe to say I butchered that one, fortunately. Okay, moving on. Uno, dos, tres. And that's how you drop a rear inner door panel on an E34. All right, now I'm gonna degrease the sill so I can see what's dirty and what's actually rusty. To keep some sanity now and later, when I'm putting the car back together, I'm bagging and tagging all the door cards, trim pieces, nuts, bolts, and safely stowing them in the overhead compartment. Now for the bottom of the door here, I'm going to use this one, which is a little more precise. Let's see how it does. This is why you wear eye protection. This literally flew straight at my eye. Okay, before we put the quarter panel back on, the bottom screw holding to the chassis was completely rusted. So I'm going to hit it with the wire brush and some rust killer rust check primer. And then we're going to get the quarter panel back on. So this is the rust converter I'm using. They all basically work in the same way. They chemically stop the oxidization process in the metal and is literally the best way of protecting metal from further corrosion other than, cutting it all away and welding in fresh metal. Now this works best when you completely grind away all the rust prior to applying it, just like I did. And it says to apply liberally, so I'm going to do 2 pretty thick coats on some of the worst areas like the front quarter panel and the jacking point. It usually takes 30 to 60 minutes for this stuff to work. I'm going to leave it off overnight just to be safe. Now I should also point out, if it isn't painfully obvious by now, I've never done this level of rust repair before, and I've never really spent a day working in a body shop. So yeah, here goes nothing. Time to put the quarter panel back on. I'm not going to leave this like this, so let's do a bit of vacuuming. Wunderbar. When the cover comes down here, the skirt, this is all going to be covered up. This is going to look brand spanking new, but most importantly, no rust. All right, so if we have a quick look at our door down here, those black spots, what you see there is basically the rust remover doing its job and chemically stopping the rust reaction from continuing, and it hardens into that kind of dark brownish color, and that's how you know it's done its job. Now we're going to wipe it down with some water and a rag, and then we are going to give it some primer coats.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, it's sensory overload time. I picked up 2 of these. There's 2 of them on the 530. I don't know which one went bad. Frankly, I'll change them both. They have a shelf life of around 100K. The car's got 126K, so easy maintenance to change both of them at once. And I picked up this oxygen sensor wrench, which is going to make the job much easier. So let's get creeping and get this done. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to let this soak with a bit of WD for 5-10 minutes. Torque spec, 37 foot-pounds or 50 newton meters. All right, so I disconnected the battery to reset the ECU, make the check engine light go away. Let's give it a whirl and see if our fix worked. Okay, moment of truth. Come on, baby. Don't let me down. All right. Bit of a rough first start. See if the check engine light shows up. Oh yeah, some new spark plugs are definitely going to do this thing a world of good, but the check engine light is not coming back. Alright, so new spark plugs and fuel filters are next on the list. Well, I'd say this garage has seen more grinding than an all ages club. And as you can see, I've done a complete 180 on the car. I obviously work in a shoebox garage. I have to do one side at a time. But having said that, actually, the rust removal wasn't that bad. And if I have half as much luck on this passenger side as I did on the driver's side, we'll be A-okay. As far as the weak idle is concerned, I'm not really worried about that. I'm 99% sure some fuel filters is going to cure that right up in no time. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this was mildly entertaining, if not educational. In the next episode, we're going to finish up the grinding. We're going to get the car idling properly. And in the meantime, I'm going to take a nap. So thank you and goodbye. Hopefully the kids don't find me in here. Ciao, ciao.